dedicated to all those who fight for God, country, and freedom. The Washington Monument was like a sundial, a black finger that points eastward to the Capitol. In the Toyota Camry parked on the lot of the National Museum, she unconsciously reached over and straightened Mike Stryker's tie. He smiled and kissed her fingers. He had to lift his legs out of the car as if they were things to place on the dark asphalt, mechanical objects that held the stumps of his thighs in a firm grip. He moved those legs with a hand of titanium and delicately balanced cables. "It's a long way to the Grant Memorial," his son said. "Do you want the chair, Dad?" But his fingers were touching the metals now and brushed across a purple heart. "I'll walk," he told him. He stood, raised to his feet by his son and daughter. He was given his crutches, which he juggled under his arms until he found his balance. "Let's go," he said. And together he and his family walked the National Mall. All around him people thronged. There must have been thousands. They wore shirts and carried signs for and against the war. Some chanted, some simply mulled around sipping water bottles, taking photos for their blogs. The dark finger of the Washington Monument's shadow crept along the National Museum of Natural History and the National Gallery of Art's sculpture gardens. Each step for him pressed the mechanical leg into muscle and bone, but the pain medication left a floating buffer there, and he only gripped his wife's hand 3 times, up until the point that they reached the National Air and Space Museum. He paused, and a kid on a skateboard asked if he could help. "No thanks," Stryker said, and walked on. The crowds were thicker near the stage as they made the east building of the National Gallery of Art. A veteran in a wheelchair with VFW buttons paused and saluted him. He returned the salute. A group of sailors ended their discussion, did a smart about face, and saluted too. Some children touched at his hands and sleeves, eager to feel a real soldier. He moved along the walkway to the Grant Memorial. People parted to let him pass. He found the speech coordinator and was seated on stage with his family. The rally began, the shadow of the Washington Monument reaching across the crowds to point at the Capitol. One after another, people spoke about the evils of war, failed campaigns, war profiteering, the blood, sorrow, money, and the inaction. The shameful, pitiful inaction of those who had the power to stop the killing. Finally, he was called to the stage. He was helped up by his son. His wife gave his forearm one last squeeze. He moved stiffly to the lectern and frowned at the mics there, pointed at his set chin. "My name is Staff Sergeant Stryker," he began. He looked across the pool surrounded by throngs of people, reflected around the kidney shape of that turgid water. "What I have to say today should be clear. It won't be complicated. Even those in the large White House to our backs will understand it. As I drove here today, I counted no less than 35 yellow ribbons to support the troops." At that moment, a cluster of doves rose from the cloisters into the static air. "Nations must sometimes go to war. Men of one nation must sometimes rise up and kill men of another. If we must do this and take arms against other human beings, let our soldiers not shed their blood for things as mercenary as corporate advantage. Let them not die. so that a handful of people can acquire what doesn't belong to them. Let us not be reduced to thugs and hitmen for leaders who only talk about courage and freedom, but cannot name one day when they exhibited one or supported the other. He tucked the notes that he had prepared in his breast pocket and continued. Send us to fight for our country. Give us that much. Don't send us to fight and die for war profiteers. We're not the mercenaries of no-bid corporate contracts. We are your sons and daughters, mothers and fathers. We are the ones who chose duty and honor over our own security and safety. In the distance, a presidential motorcade slipped along less crowded streets, avoiding the mall, escaping to the hangar of Air Force One. The graves of my brothers and sisters in arms, the sergeant went on, should not be the final resting place of those who only died so that our fear could destroy the freedom they gave their lives for. We honor them by protecting dissent, by speaking up to power to be the Americans so many have given their lives for, and to be that with the courage of our unwavering, unflinching conviction.